Hi again guys, and welcome to another installment, of course, of Beards and Cars. This is my podcast style series where we break down a number of topics, often community suggested ones, and this one is actually following on from last week, which was a very popular episode, and I kind of expected that it would be given the nature of the thumbnail and the title. The 40 cars that I predicted were going to come to GT Sport, and a lot of them are fairly obvious choices, previously premiums, that kind of stuff, but for this list, we're kind of moving naturally on from cars to circuits. What circuits do I predict have at least a good chance, if not a great chance, of debuting, well, not debuting again, but returning in GT Sport? Well, I've selected 10, and I will be honest, I found it a little bit more difficult to select 10 solid predictions for circuits than I did for 40 cars. To be honest, I could do more than 40 cars that I think are going to come back. For tracks, though, I think it's not as easy, because for one thing, there are so few tracks in comparison to how many cars there are in the games. There are like 40 circuits compared to 1,200 cars, for instance, in GT6, but I did whittle it down to the 10 that I believe have the strongest chance. Now, I'm going to do these in no particular order, and I'll try to find some footage from previous reviews and that for those who are unfamiliar with the tracks, but no promises there. And of course, last week there were tons of comments, an unfortunate amount of comments in fact, about people wanting to see the cars that I was talking about in the video instead of racing footage from GT Sport. Well, to those people, it's not that I don't understand where you're coming from, it's just that you clearly have no idea what's involved in editing a video. The purpose of these videos is not to be a visual video, it's a podcast, which by definition is audio based. The video serves next to no purpose. So for this particular pick, as I said, I'll try to find some older footage of the tracks, but they are in no particular order. So first of all, Deep Forest. Now, I believe, if I recall correctly, there were quite a few rumours, maybe even from stuff that Kaz himself had said, about Deep Forest returning to GT Sport. I'm not sure if it was either Deep Forest or Trial Mountain, but I think it was Deep Forest that was one of Kaz's personal favourites. Now, for me, I'm more of a Trial Mountain kind of guy, but I would definitely say that Deep Forest would seem to have more of a chance of coming back. And it's not that I dislike Deep Forest, I actually like it quite a bit. I just find Trial Mountain a little bit more technical. There's just something that appeals to me a bit more about the style of that track, whereas Deep Forest feels like kind of more of a clubman style track, sort of an entry level layout where it's very easy, very forgiving. There aren't really that many corners that catch you out, but it's a great track nonetheless. So that is my first prediction. Now, I wouldn't say that that one has a guaranteed chance. I'd say it has a good chance as far as predictions go. The next one, though, there have been a lot of rumours about, perhaps with reasons behind them, perhaps not. A lot of people want it brought back, and that is, of course, Spa. Spa is a massively popular track. It hasn't been in the series for all that long compared to many of the others, but of course it's one of the most significant real-world circuits to feature in Gran Turismo because of the history behind it. It's a great track layout for pretty much any kind of car. You can race hot hatches there, you can race everything up to formula cars and prototypes. It's a great track layout. Now, I must admit, I don't spend a massive amount of time on Spa. It tends to be one of my probably second tier choices of real world track, my first tier being stuff like Le Mans or the Nordschleife, and then probably Laguna Seca after that, and perhaps somewhere down the line is Spa for me. But I know a lot of people really, really love Spa. It's not hard to see why. It is a great track, it's an iconic one. And it would be very cool to see it come back and race like your McLaren P1 GTR around there or something like that. It's certainly a track that I think has a very, very good chance of coming back, especially because as far as tracks go, it was kind of a premium track, if you will. There were certain tracks in Gran Turismo 6 that were still very basic looking, and then there were others that had changeable weather and changeable time of day, and those tend to be the tracks that I would call premium tracks, and Spa was one of those. There were two different versions. The next one I think has a very good chance, and it's one which I think would open up another category of racing that we have in the game technically, but it would open it up more, and that is Daytona. Because if you bring back Daytona, you'd kind of have to bring back at least two versions, the road course and the oval. And although we have oval racing technically in the game, it's not really oval racing in the general sense. Because Blue Moon Bay is fantastic for earning money, but it's hardly an oval race. It's not even an oval. Although, of course, I know that term isn't literal. And then the actual oval track that we have in the game is so small that you do a lap in like 10 seconds. So to have a full-on NASCAR spec oval would be very cool to have back. So the Daytona Road Course, I would say, is a great circuit. I still wouldn't necessarily put it like in my top 10, but I do enjoy the track a lot. Again, it had the changeable weather, changeable time of day, and it would be cool actually to finally have some more American tracks in the game. Because if I recall correctly, I don't think we actually have any American circuits in GT Sport. I may be wrong, there may be one or two that I'm not thinking of, but I don't think we've currently got any. At least not any as iconic as stuff like Daytona. So I think Daytona coming back would be very cool. Especially if it came back alongside NASCAR, for instance. If they brought NASCAR back at the same time, that would be a very cool addition. The next one, I think, has less of a chance, in fact, I would say significantly less of a chance than Daytona, but it's still a track which would be hugely popular for a number of reasons, and it's also an American track which has a ton of historical relevance to multiple forms of racing. Indianapolis. And again, if you brought it back, you would kind of have to bring back both the road and the oval. Again, it's not an oval, it's a rectangle, but, same thing applies. One of the most iconic, if not the most iconic ovals in the world, probably even more so than Daytona. And the road course, it's got a very Sebring kind of vibe to it, with lots of square corners, a very wide open track, very flat, you can see everything. It's a great circuit. People love it for drag racing as well on that one particular straight section next to the road. So yeah, for drifting it's great, for racing it's great, for drag racing, and of course for oval racing it's one of the best out there. You can get extremely high speeds. It's a fantastic track for endurance oval racing as well. I used to love racing it in Gran Turismo 5 with the Red Bull. It was like a 2 or 3 hour endurance. So yeah, I think the Indy circuit would be very cool to come back. As far as its chances, well, it wasn't a premium track. There was no changeable weather, no changeable time of day, so it was essentially a basic looking circuit. But an update would be very cool. I would say that it has less of a chance of coming back than Daytona, but I do think it still has a chance. And I would actually probably prefer Indy to come back than Daytona, to be honest, of the two. The next one, though, well, this is one that I've talked about before. I'm still, to be honest, shocked that this one still isn't in the game after well over a year of GT Sport being released. This one to me is probably second highest on the list of tracks that I would want to return, second only to Le Mans, because of course Le Mans wasn't in the game, then it got added alongside our first 3 Group C cars. That was a great update, probably my favourite update of them all for those reasons. Laguna Seca, Laguna Seca is not in the game. And I didn't even realise that it wasn't until a few months after starting to play it. Because it's just that kind of track where you don't really think about it not being included, because it's such an obvious choice that you'd think, well, of course it's in the game. It's Gran Turismo, they've got to have Laguna Seca. It's been in the franchise for so long, why wouldn't they have it? And then when you look through the track list and you suddenly realise, wait a second, Laguna Seca isn't in the game. That's such a strangely shocking moment. Like, you'd think you'd notice that, but you don't. Because Laguna Seca is such an iconic track that you more or less assume that they would have it. So I really hope that they bring Laguna Seca back. It's one of those tracks that, again, I don't even know if it would be in my top 10, but it's such an iconic track. It's had such an important part in my Gran Turismo childhood, growing up playing the games. And it's been a part of so many racing franchises, like Forza and Gran Turismo, for instance. So, yeah, Laguna Seca, I would imagine, is very high on the agenda for Polyphony. I would be surprised and disappointed if it wasn't, because it's such an iconic track, such a great one as well. So, yeah, Laguna Seca might actually be my number 1 from this list, personally. Next up, a track which, again, you can easily forget is not in the game, but especially with the addition of, so far, 6 Super GT cars, I'm surprised that we still don't have this one. We've got Tsukuba, we've got Suzuka, we don't have Motegi, Twin Ring Motegi. It's one of the most iconic Super GT tracks, never been one of my favourites. I find the track, to be honest, quite boring, because it's just up and down each straight section, but a ton of people do love it. It was already a premium, it had the changeable time of day. I'm shocked that it wasn't in the game from release, because, again, it was already a premium, so I wouldn't have thought I'd have to do anywhere near as much work to update it as they would for instance, Indy, or Deep Forest, or Trial Mountain. But, yeah, I mean, Motegi's like up there with Laguna Seca in terms of how iconic it is to the franchise. Especially, as I said, with the first 3 Super GTs coming along, and now the second 3 Super GTs. Either of those packs would have been a cool way to debut Motegi again, and an appropriate one, but we still don't have it. That's kind of shocking to me, so we'll have to wait and see. I would say Motegi has a pretty good chance. In fact, I'd say it has a strong chance. Maybe right behind Laguna Seca. I think Laguna Seca might be the strongest chance of this entire list for me. Up there with Spa and Motegi, in fact. The next one is a track which I'm putting on the list primarily because not only is it so iconic, but also this track was specifically brought back and updated in Gran Turismo 6 in a very similar way to how it could return in GT Sport. Midfield. Midfield Raceway. When I was a kid, when I first started playing the games, this was my favourite track. Before the Nordschleife, before Le Mans, before I even drove on those tracks, because Gran Turismo 4 was the first time for both of those. Before I even knew what those circuits were, Midfield was my number 1 track. I love Midfield, and although I don't drive on it anywhere near as much now because of having so many other choices, it's still a fan favourite and it's still a special track to me. It might be my favourite fictional track of its kind, up against, like the Deep Forest, the Trial Mountains, those kind of tracks. Complex String notwithstanding, which is my absolute favourite fictional track, but I think Midfield has actually a very strong chance of coming back, and I think a lot of people would be very happy if it did as well. The next one, I would say, is probably one of the lower ones on this list in terms of the likelihood, but it was a premium to some degree. It was a fan favourite track. It's great for stuff like cruising and meetups. You can cut across the track in a lot of sections and have like off-road fun in a similar way to Willow Springs. Ascari. The Ascari Race Resort. Now, the reason why I'm saying this one has a much, much lower likelihood is simply because it's just that kind of track. It's not iconic from the franchise, it's a relative newcomer, and as fun as it is, it's just not one of those tracks that has the pedigree of many of the others. At the end of the day, it's a race resort, primarily. So, of course, it doesn't have the history of a Daytona, of a Laguna Seca, of a Le Mans, of an Indy. But it's still a very cool track. It's a very technical circuit. I believe a lap takes something like 2:10, 2:20, something like that. So it's a great layout, a great lap time, very technical, not particularly beginner friendly, but a great looking track as well. But I don't think it has a huge chance. I'd probably give this one like a 2 or 3 out of 10 in terms of the chance it has of coming back, but that's still enough to actually put it on the list. The next one, a ton of people have probably already commented this as soon as they clicked on the video. I actually completely forgot this one, and the primary reason is because unlike Laguna Seca, which I forgot because you just assume that it's in, I forgot this one because I simply don't care for the track, and I never have, despite the fact that it's one of the only racetracks I've actually been to. Silverstone. A ton of people love Silverstone. I get why. It is iconic, of course. I just don't like it. I'm just not a fan of the Silverstone circuit. I don't like it in Gran Turismo. I don't like it in Forza. It just doesn't do it for me. I find it an incredibly boring track, and I know a ton of people love it, but as I said, just not my cup of tea. To be honest, although I'm British, I'm not a fan of very many British tracks. I find Silverstone boring. I find Brands Hatch boring. Goodwood isn't even a full-on track anyway. I'm just not a fan of most British circuits. I can't even think of a single British track that I genuinely love. I'm just not a fan of them. But Silverstone does have a ton of fans, so of course it has a very strong likelihood of coming back, I would say. A full premium, perhaps with changeable weather, which I don't recall that we had before. Maybe even racing there at night time would be cool as well. So yeah, I think Silverstone has a pretty strong chance. I wouldn't be at all surprised if we got Silverstone, say, in the next 6 months, something like that. Probably up there with Spa and Laguna Seca. Maybe a little bit behind those, but still I'd say it has a very strong chance. And the last one, I'll be completely honest and say the reason why I added this track is because of all the tracks that were left on the list from GT6 that I was looking through. I think that this one is the only one left that I think has any kind of decent chance of coming back, and even then, I would give this one like a 1 out of 10. in terms of the chance it has. I would love to see this track return because I do really like the track, but I just don't feel confident in this one coming back, and that's Grand Valley. I love Grand Valley. For those who haven't driven on it, it's got the curving tunnel corner toward the end of the track, a great long home straight with a curve into a hairpin at the end. It's a great track. There are a couple of different variations. This one always seems to be talked about in the same conversation as Autumn Ring in online lobbies. I've never been a fan of Autumn Ring, though. I vastly prefer Grand Valley. I think it's a great circuit. It's a fantastic track for prototype racing, and I would say an even better one for GT racing, like Super GTs or GT3s. It's such a competitive track, really wide road, great straight sections, great flowing corners. I would love to see Grand Valley come back, but I don't think it has a huge chance. I would say it's probably somewhere around Ascari on this list in terms of the likelihood, which is pretty low, as I said. So that's my 10 picks, and although technically I should have probably said this at the start of the video, because every single time I make one of these lists, the vast majority of people get the totally wrong idea and start putting like, oh, I want Interlagos, I want Imola. That's not the purpose of this list. This is not the tracks that we want to come back. This is the tracks that we think are the most likely to come back. Just like last week with the cars. Do you seriously think that the Alfa Romeo Brera is one of the 40 cars that I want back the most? No, of course not. I was talking about the cars that are most likely to come back. Likewise with this list. Of course, if I was making the tracks that I want to come back, it would be totally different. And I have done that list before. But I'd love to see which ones you think are the most likely. You could do it in order, even, which I didn't do for this list. It was kind of out of order. So I would say my number one in terms of how much I want it to come back out of these 10 would easily be Laguna Seca. The one that I have the most confidence in coming back would probably be split between three. Either Laguna Seca, Spa, or Silverstone, with Daytona coming in right behind them. And I would say that those top three are probably the most likely of these. So that's my 10 predictions for the most likely tracks to come back. And we'll have, of course, to wait and see if they do. So, as I said, slap yours down below. And, of course, that's it for now. And I'll see you next week. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.